We're just getting to the USC UCLA story, which is them moving from the Pac-12 going to the Big Ten. Now, people ask why. Money. That's the only reason. Money and recruiting. The Big Ten is one of the, Big Ten. The Big Ten is one of the prime conferences that recruit on the West Coast. When you have, Maryland, Michigan State, Ohio State, those teams are, those are the teams that a lot of their players come from the West Coast. So, and if you look, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska, Northwestern, most of Purdue, Rutgers, most of those teams are in one region. So you go to the Big Ten, who was about to, by the way, get a huge contract from, TV deals. Now you have two West Coast teams, and a lot of these schools recruit from the West Coast. It's a win-win for UCLA and Michigan. UCLA and USC. Now, I do think that, of course, you understand that it's for money. You understand that it's for viewership. You understand that, now that they go to the Big Ten and the Big Ten's about to get this huge contract from TV deals, it's going to be it's UCLA and USC were the quote unquote gold standard of the Pac-12, just like Texas and damn, I forgot the other team. Texas and Oklahoma were the mainstays at for the Big 12. Now, what you're starting to see is, and I think Herbstreit kind of alluded to it. You're starting to see the big two. The big two, which is the Big Ten and the SEC. It doesn't matter the recent amount of success or the recent lack of success, because if you look, USC hasn't been that successful recently. UCLA hasn't been that successful recently, and honestly, Oklahoma, they did have Kyler Murray, they did have Baker Mayfield, but they haven't really won anything. And Texas ain't really been, they just been riding on name alone. But even still, even with their lack of success, USC and UCLA was the GOAT, the most popular teams in the Pac-12. They, even with Oregon, how successful Oregon's been recently, USC and UCLA was the money makers for the Pac-12. Even with TCU being good, Baylor being good recently, Texas and Oklahoma was the money makers for the Big 12. And now that you're seeing those two, USC and UCLA going to the Big 10, and you see Texas and Oklahoma going to SEC, it's hard to see how there isn't going to be more movement. There isn't going to be, of course, we're waiting to see what happens with Notre Dame. So, and Notre Dame is independent, of course, in football. Now, I do know that their alliance, or their alliance, I guess, is with the ACC, seeing as though the basketball and every other sport in Notre Dame is ACC. But with the football, they could pretty much buy their way out of that. But it's starting to go to a big two, which is the Big Ten and the SEC. Because I don't know, unless another team comes out of nowhere, or multiple teams come out of nowhere, I don't see how the Pac-12 survives. I don't see how the Big Ten, the Big 12, they did get some more teams, but regionally, you get two teams from the West Coast now. This is huge for college football, man. This is huge for recruiting. This is huge money-wise. This is huge. The two most profitable Pac-12 schools or teams just left. The two most profitable Big 12 teams left. What do you think is going to happen after that? Now, I'm not saying it's only going to be the Big Two as Big 10 and Big or SEC, but that's what it's starting to look like. This is huge, bro. This is huge for recruiting. This is huge money-wise. This is huge for the conferences that are being left. Like I said, I mean, the Pac-12 said that they're shocked and like disappointed. Hell yeah, they are. You just lost your two biggest revenue. It doesn't matter if they haven't been good for a while. You just lost your two biggest revenue schools. Everyone knows about UCLA. Everyone knows about USC. Those, man, look. This is also big for Big Ten schools. Like, yeah, you have Michigan and Ohio State, but recruiting-wise, now you have two huge players in SEC. I mean, no, two huge players in USC and UCLA. Now, UCLA and USC about to understand what it's like playing in playing in snow. But this is huge for recruiting, clearly. So this is a big seismic move. If it wasn't for Kevin Durant saying Kevin Durant requesting a trade, this would be a bigger story. Of course, you have to see what happens moving forward, but this is big. This is big. This is big. So I don't see, even with Oregon and other teams, I don't see how the Pac-12 is already on its, I'm not gonna say last leg, but already leaps and bounds behind the SEC and the Big Ten as far as revenue, as far as popularity. A lot of their games come on at 10:30 at night on the East Coast. So they don't even get the same amount of visibility. So you lose your two biggest schools, and you're already struggling with visibility. You're already struggling with recruiting. You're already struggling with viewership. You're already struggling to keep up with the Big Ten, who has Michigan, who has Michigan State, who has Ohio State. You're already struggling keeping up with the SEC, who has Alabama, who has Auburn, who has Georgia, who just won a national championship. And then you lose your two biggest schools. I don't know. Just like I'm not sure how the Big 12 is going to fare once it's official that Texas and Oklahoma officially break off and go into SEC. I don't know. It's I don't know how the Pac-12 or Big 12 survive after that. We'll see clearly, but don't be surprised if a lot more teams from the Pac-12 and from the Big 10 merge and go other places, because they just can't sustain.